Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, political fighters. And yes, all of our players. I haven't said that out of my mouth in a while, but all of our players does mean all of our players. And we were just having a conversation here a moment ago, Devin and I, about what's happening in South Carolina. We'll get to that a little bit later, but welcome to the July 14th, 2026 edition of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. And, of course, email me at richard@wcpt820.com and follow me on all the socials under Choose Views. Posting every day something curious and interesting. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. There you can get Choose Views featured interviews. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez. It's The Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath. Out Chicago, and our other great shows and interviews. And in the evenings, by all means, check out The Politics Bar, the Matt McNeil Show, and The Gailey Show. A couple of quick ones over at Heartland Signal. Radio Free America, what Mark Andreessen can learn from Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. You guys will appreciate that. So make your way over to heartlandsignal.com to check out the current articles, but, go back a little bit in the Wayback Machine. There might be a few things that you missed, and if you did, you have some time to go back and check those out. Check those out maybe then rather than other things that you might look at. And then save, and pass along to somebody else that you know. On today's show, we will be talking to a few people. In the 6:30 hour, we have an interview with Amber Wallin, who you guys will appreciate. She is the executive director of the State Revenue Alliance. And, WCPT, Heartland Signal, in our various partnerships, one of the big ones is how we work with making sure that state elections, state funding, state budgeting, state politicians are all leaning into what's important to the people in their particular state. And on a national level, that's one of the tools that we have to take back the levers of power. So our interview with Amber, we'll have it in the 6:30 hour. And then the Director of Communications for the Governor's Highway Safety Association, Adam Snider, will be with us for a short bit toward the top of the hour, just to talk a little bit about some new statistics on what's happening when it comes to pedestrian safety. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him for a few minutes. And then in the 7 o'clock hour, Democratic strategist Corbin Trent will be with us to talk about what's happening in some of the state elections as well. And we'll probably talk a little bit about Maine and what's happening with the conversation there. And then Dr. Annie Andrews, pediatrician, public health expert, and the competitor for our team, U.S. candidate for Senate in South Carolina. This is the same Dr. Andrews that has been running for a while for this Senate seat against the late Lindsey Graham. And as you guys just, heard or may have heard overnight, that the governor of South Carolina did appoint Lindsey Graham's sister to essentially be a placeholder in that seat until the end of the year, this election season that we're in the middle of. So I'm looking forward to talking to Dr. Andrews about all that's happened there and how this has impacted the race and what her thoughts are and what how she's gonna continue to go forward. So that will be something you guys will want to tune into and make sure you have your notebooks ready. So there you go. We got a question for the day that I think you guys should chime in on this one, because it's one that we all are impacted by. And it's kind of a wish list question, but I think it's one that you guys can appreciate. So you'll text your answer to us, your thoughts on the question, or give us a call and we'll chat about it. And most definitely go to our Facebook page and leave your comments and thoughts there. But here is our question of the day. I'll put these glasses back on. If you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which current priority would receive less funding and which would receive more? Okay, so there we go again. If you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which current priority would receive less funding and which would receive more? Love to hear what you guys have to say about that one, because I talk about it a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time in terms of where we should be spending our money and how we should be allocating. And I thought, let's put it to you guys. What do you think? Let us know by sending us a text or giving us a phone call at 773-763-9278 or going to our Facebook page and leaving your thoughts and comments there. And what I'll ask you guys to do as well is get some help with this one. And I don't mean help like you need help, but share this with some people that are in your world. Ask them that question. If you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which current priority would receive less funding and which would receive more? Share this with your friends, people that you talk to every day, your colleagues and all the rest, your work, your coworkers and whatever that may be, your family. Ask them what would they do? Because I think a lot of times that we talk about, like I said yesterday, when a little bit of commentary on what we're spending, how much more money people are spending, that $450 to $1,000 per month, and what that could do and how that could impact individual budgets differently if folks were able to save that money rather than having to spend it because of the increase in tariffs. The increase in tariffs and, of course, this Iran war. But when we talk about the federal budget, I think that, everybody's got a thought about it. I would gather that maybe I'm making too much of an assumption there. But let's make the assumption for the purpose of the conversation. Let's assume that everybody's got an opinion about what we should be spending our federal budget on. So share this with the people that you know, see what their thoughts are, pass it on and see what kind of feedback you get from people. Still, send us your thoughts today, but in the next couple of days, just share it with somebody and ask them, what would you do? Because I think it's a good way to get a sort of an everyday person's thought about where we could be or where we should be spending money. And if you had the power instantly to make that determination, what would that be? And then, how do you think that will impact the overall state of the country, state of the nation, as they say? So there you go. Just a couple of quick thoughts on that in addition to the question itself. We'll go ahead. Let's take our break a little bit early because then we come back with a little bit more time to cover some other items. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. And our other friends up in Minnesota, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, AM 950. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated the best hearing aids of 2026 by Forbes Health, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, starting at just $98 a pair.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 1 million happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
How do you know you're home? At Habitat for Humanity, we believe it's when you find peace, stability, and safety. But 1 in 3 people on Earth woke up today without a good home. Not because of chance, but because of high costs and other very real barriers. A housing crisis this big needs all of us. So let's open the door to opportunity and build a tomorrow where home is possible for everyone. Visit Habitat.org to learn more. Again, that's Habitat.org. Habitat for Humanity. Let's open the door.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you are just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu, and thank you for being with us on this July 14th, 2026, which means we got a couple of quick Choose Views news items for you this morning. Law school bans electronic devices for first-year students as educators from grade schools to grad schools grapple with the influx of AI in classrooms. The University of Chicago Law School is taking a novel approach. banning first-year law students from using electronic devices in core classes. While the university will still teach AI skills in other courses, it argues the strategy is necessary for beginning students to develop, quote, essential skills that distinguish excellent lawyers. Adding, quote, we need to ensure that our students actually learn to think critically, strategically, and independently without relying on AI. I give them a 10 plus score on that because the part there, we need to ensure our students actually learn to think critically, strategically, and independently. That's the key part, independently. So kudos to them, and maybe more will take on that same position. More Americans drawing on credit savings to buy food. Like we said yesterday, the rising cost of groceries is leading more Americans to take on credit card debt and draw from savings, according to the nonpartisan think tank at the Urban Institute. Researchers found that there are over a quarter of working-age adults who use credit cards to buy groceries are struggling to make payments, while about 1 in 10 utilize buy now, pay later loans to purchase food. Nearly 20% of adults surveyed also tapped into long-term or emergency savings reserves over the past year to cover increased grocery costs. That's just absolutely unacceptable, America. It just is. And it's coming from the Republicans. They're not stopping what Donald Trump has started, which leads us to oil prices jump as the U.S. and Iran fight over the Straits of Hormuz. They surged yesterday as tensions escalated between the U.S. and Iran over the control of the Straits, and Donald Trump stated that the U.S. would reinstate a blockade of Iranian ships through the Vital Passage. Global oil benchmark Brent crude rose about 5% to around $80 a barrel. The two countries exchanged back-and-forth strikes over the weekend, threatening an already fragile ceasefire agreement. State attorneys general sue over the Paramount WBD deal. A group of 12 state attorneys general, including California's Rob Bonta, have sued to block Paramount's Warner Brothers deal with Discovery, and this is all based on antitrust. Paramount, meanwhile, is said to be weighing the possibility of relocating its headquarters out of California. The deal, which would create the largest TV network portfolio in the U.S., has been approved by the federal government and shareholders. But in addition to state-level pushback, Paramount's bid for Warner Brothers Discovery still faces EU scrutiny. In other words, the European Union is not happy with it as well. Smartphone shipments hit a 13-year low last quarter. Smart global phone shipments tumbled 11% last quarter, hitting their lowest level for that period for more than a decade. Counterport Research did say this on Monday, and the only phone maker to notch any growth was Apple, bringing its global market share to a record 20%. Only Samsung can claim a larger share at 24%. The other three makers, Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo, were hurt by surging handset prices driven by the ongoing memory chip shortage, which analysts say could linger into 2027. And the parasitic outbreak prompts restaurants to pull produce. An ongoing foodborne illness outbreak has sickened thousands of Americans, prompting restaurant menu changes and increased caution around dining out. Over 2,600 cases of cycloporasis have been reported in Michigan alone, where Taco Bell locations removed ingredients including lettuce and cilantro from their menus. Other restaurant chains remain on high alert. Quote, we are monitoring the situation closely and evaluating any information that becomes available. All right, a couple of quick Choose Views news items on this June 14th, 2026. I'm going to get back to this food situation in a moment as part of some of today's commentary. But today on Live, Local, and Progressive, Joan Esposito will be talking to William Muck, professor of political science at North Central College, Paul Lisnek, a multi-Emmy award-winning TV host who served as political and legal analyst at WGN for 18 years. Young Mi Kim, the Velas Distinguished Achievement Professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. That's a mouthful. Professor of Journalism and Mass Communications will also be joining Joan. Live, Local, and Progressive today, 2 to 5 Central here on WCPT, the heartlandsignal.com website, and tune in. And then tonight on Driving It Home, Patty will be joined by Reed McCollum, chair of the Democratic Party of DuPage County, along with 3 interns. from that same group. And radio host and commentator Ben Cominos will be joining Patty. Driving and Home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT AM 820, the Heartland Signal website. Tune in, YouTube, and Facebook. And then tomorrow on Choose Views, I'll be joined by Professor Eddie Glaude. Several best-selling books, as you know. He has been a voice in and out of politics and commentator on various news outlets. And, of course, Kurt Mullett will be with us from Hoosier Blue 63. And former Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin and 2026 candidate for Wisconsin Governor Mandela Barnes will be with us. So join us on Facebook Live. You can catch all of our shows by finding it at facebook.com/WCPT820. So there you go. All right. Let's see. We got a couple of comments already about our question of the day. One of the responses to our question of the day about if you were instantly in charge of the federal budget. Lois says, less for the military, more for infrastructure that helps reduce climate change. Actually, everything in the federal government should get more money at the expense of the military. Lois, front of the class, first door on the right, first chair on the right. I agree with you. Yeah, the military budget can be reduced dramatically, and let's bump up our budget in other areas. So that is spot on. And I agree with you 1,000%. First row. Mike, you know what that is, right? In the classroom, the first row closest to the door. So anyhow. All right. So as a quick reminder, if you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which priority would receive less funding and which would receive more? I want to hear from you guys in that space. But I want to circle back to some thoughts I have about this situation with the cyclospora parasite. It is something that we have to be very, very mindful of. And I'm going to come at this from two angles, or with two points of overview. In case you weren't aware, many people are, but right now we need to be mindful of this multi-stage cyclospora parasite. And some of the suggestions that I've come up with real quickly in terms of being, first of all, mindful of it, being aware of it if you are going out to dinner someplace and it's being found in a lot of the pre-bagged items that they're serving as it relates to vegetables and produce. So both ones that are served at restaurants and ones that you might buy at a store and bringing home. So in terms of some quick enhanced food safety and hygiene items, avoid high-risk foods, skip the pre-cut bag salad and produce, as they are the most common sources found right now for the contamination, according to research from the New York Times. Wash and scrub thoroughly using as high-pressure water as you can, and because that's more effective than static soaking. Making sure that any of the produce that has a skin on it, like cucumbers and melons and those sorts of things, that they're cut and they're scrubbed before you cut them. In terms of vegetables that are cooking, that you would cook, that's probably the most effective way to make sure that certain vegetables have reduced contamination. Make sure that your kitchen surfaces and utensils are as clean as possible. Make sure that you're washing them between the use per vegetable item or produce item. And if you happen to be using recreational water to clean any of the vegetable items, make sure that you use another substance to maybe rinse off any of the tools you may use, or utensils, I should say, you might use to cut them. If you see any symptoms that seem unusual, heightened in temperature, body temperature, diarrhea, or anything like that, make sure you seek medical care. Don't sit back and think that you may not be have been affected by the cyclospora parasite. So just a couple things for you guys to be aware of there. And now I'm going to throw some sand. First the warning and a little bit of suggestion, and then comes the sand. A lot of what we are seeing in this particular case is happening in certain states, and they're doing the best that they can at the Department of Health and Human Services to track this. But the scrutiny that they're facing is appropriate because a lot of this is being tied back to a reduction in the federal workforce and scaling back of federal and state tracking programs because the Department of Health and Human Services is a federal agency. So as a federal agency, they, create the policy that we use on a federal level for our food security and safety. And then they provide the states with the guides that they need as it relates to food because of the interstate transportation of food. A lot of people don't know that. And so they still have a hand in what goes on in food safety in a state because of the way in which food is brought into a particular state. So these cutbacks are not just in terms of the monitoring of the food itself, but also in the tracking of diseases. And I just kind of pounded the desk here. Because we're not tracking diseases because of the cuts, they've in July of last year, the CDC curtailed the Foodborne Diseases Active Surveillance Network. Why would you do that? When you've got, so just think about this. This is the insanity of RFK Jr. He talks about making people healthier and all these things that he's just thrown out as a bunch of word salad sometimes. But at the end of the day, if you're going to provide or have an agency that's about helping people be safer across the board when it comes to health, and particularly when it comes to what we put in our mouths and ingest, then you want to think you'd ramp up the people that are in that department or in that agency. But they've cut the CDC, curtailed, as I said, the Foodborne Disease Active Surveillance Network. They've reallocated the Division of Parasitic Diseases and Malaria, moving those people to other departments. And what that does, of course, is it reduces their ability to be on watch when it comes to the items that they get early warning on that could have parasites, like we're dealing with now. And then what that then leads to is a delay in not only in the detection of that something exists, but also identifying what can be the best courses of action to resolution and safety for the country. And then one of the things that a lot of people don't really maybe tap into is closed cases. And why this is important in my mind is when there's it's sort of, the domino of this. If there's not early detection, then you can't come up with ways to prevent. And then you don't know what to use or what tools are available to prevent and make the states aware and the local grocers aware of what the problems are. So many that I've been following and reading over the last couple of days in this area with regard to the cyclosporal parasite has said this is something that not only could have been prevented, but once it was out, the resolution, the solutions, the awareness could have been delivered a lot faster. So the problem starts, unfortunately, but in this case, ironically, with the same agency that should be protecting us. They cut back. They allow for cutbacks, and this disease tracking awareness department has basically been gutted. So here we are with people in America sick because our federal government and the heads of those agencies don't know what the heck they're doing. So just a couple of thoughts and comments from me on that. Do better, federal government, because, that's part of your job. And the Republicans, guess what? You're in charge of the federal government, so this lands in your lap. Let's take a quick break, guys. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and our good friends at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. When we come back, we'll have a quick interview with Amber Wallin. We'll be right back.
A loved one owns a gun, and for a while now, you've been concerned about their behavior. They're just not acting like themselves. They've been distant, they've been unpredictable, they've been lashing out. They've been saying things that make you worried they might harm themselves or friends or family. Or you're worried this loved one might hurt you. Maybe they recently threatened someone with their gun. You know something needs to be done, and you wish more than anything you could hit pause on this situation. Well, here in Illinois, you can, with a firearm restraining order. In extreme cases, this order temporarily prevents a person in crisis from having a firearm, giving them time to heal before they do something dangerous or even deadly. If you are worried about a loved one in crisis who has access to a firearm, learn more about firearm restraining orders at illinois.gov/pause to heal. A public service announcement brought to you by the Illinois Department of Public Health, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Kevin Love. Sony Pictures Animation's film GOAT is out now, and we've created something special to go with it. Inspired by the film, GOAT Beyond the Game is a free curriculum that gives kids creative ways to support their emotional well-being. Designed to help kids build their confidence, stay focused, and navigate their emotions, the program brings the film's core themes into the classroom through fun activities. These are evidence-based tools that actually work and will help kids discover they have the power to change the game. Visit kevinlovefund.org and download it today for your classroom or family.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor. Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Visit managerbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
This is WCPT 820. Where facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views. Guys, thanks for being with us this morning. We've had a wonderful opportunity to talk to so many great people that have written fantastic articles. They've covered areas that are really important to us. And with us today is the executive director of the State Revenue Alliance. And you guys know how I feel about the states and their involvement in how we fix our democracy. Amber Wallin is the executive director, and I'm glad to have her with us this morning. Good morning, Amber, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning, Richard. So good to be here. Thanks for having us. Absolutely.
Well, I'll just kick right off by saying that so many people right now are wondering, what do we do? How do we fight? What are our processes? And I think that the states handling their business, and I mean that in the positive way, is really kind of our superpower right now. Taking back the states and having the states' involvement in so many levels of politics and social issues and economic issues is really the thing that we have to sort of grab onto and be willing to fight for. And as we do that, then I think it strengthens our position on a national level when it comes to all of these issues. So tell us a little bit about the organization, the State Revenue Alliance, and tell us a little bit about Amber, but also about the organization.
Well, thank you, Richard. I'm Amber. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm really lucky to lead the State Revenue Alliance. And we get to work with state-based community groups across nearly 40 states that are working to find and implement better tax policies that better support the programs and services that matter most to families and communities all across the country. So thinking about how we're funding healthcare, how we're ensuring that our kids have access to great schools, how we ensure that multiple generations of families have access to economic opportunity. These are all tied to how much revenue our states are raising. And I loved hearing your intro. We're just so simpatico on that, because part of the reason we do our work at the state level is because we think state level policy occupies this really unique space. It both has incredible power to impact people's lives, to create policies and move $3 trillion every year in public funding at the state level, but it's also pretty uniquely accessible and personal enough that where people can actually get really closely engaged and actually have an impact on the policy process. You know, we always say states are the labs of innovation, and particularly in this moment, state level work can have such a big impact on people's lives and can be really a place where we're defending and protecting communities when and where they need it most.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think if one takes a partisan position, and partisan has gotten a bad rap, one takes a position of what they stand for. And if it happens to be, on the left side of the Democratic side of the progressive side of the conversation, then so be it. But the facts bear this out, is that when Democrats have control of state legislatures, we've gotten more things done than when we don't have. And I'm not saying that someone has to necessarily agree with that, because the facts bear it out. And when we have organizations like yours that highlight what the importance of the states are in that process, we get even more things done because you bring data, you bring facts, and you bring a little bit of pressure to the states to do a better job. What are your thoughts about that?
We sure do. And, the reason we do it, I'll say tax is one of those areas that can feel super wonky or inaccessible to folks. But the reality is, in the heart of kind of what we do and how we do it, is really this belief that folks do understand taxes. Folks manage their own budgets in their homes. They understand what things cost, what they need to have in their pockets to pay for it. And, the other element is, though tax can seem kind of wonky, it's actually super personal. And one of the things we operate by is this idea that tax policy, as wonky as it can seem, is really at its heart people policy. There's that quote, "Show me your budget, I'll show you what you value." And the same that is true for budgets is true for tax. And as you outlined what you said before, this is how we show love and care for our communities, what we are spending on, how we raise and spend our money, how much we raise, who pays what they owe, who benefits the most, who doesn't, whether or not we're raising enough funding to feed our families and support our schools, provide healthcare for our neighbors. These are all moral choices, values-based choices that really should be driven and guided by the people that are most impacted by them. And so that's why we do our work. But unfortunately, we know that's long not been the case in tax. It's not the case in tax right now on the federal level, where we know who's in charge. But it's also long not been the case in state taxes, where wealthy and well-connected folks have had outsized influence, and that's led a lot of state tax codes to become worse for folks as a result. And so at the heart of what we do is wanting to open up that tax system and our tax code so that the people who are most impacted by them have influence and have policies that work best for them and their families.
One of the things that New Mexico has, New Mexico is a wonderful, beautiful state. And I've shared with you how much I love the state and how much I try to get out there. My wife and I do. And we love the community. We love the climate. We love the people and all the rest. And this may seem like a kind of crazy question, but one of the things that New Mexico doesn't have is a national sports franchise, baseball, football, basketball, some great college teams and all the rest. But we in Chicago have the Bears, we've got the Bulls, we've got the White Sox, the Cubs, and they're known, noted global teams because of it being in Chicago. And we're having this fight right now with the Bears staying in Chicago versus going someplace else. And everybody knows about it if you follow sports loosely. But there's a political piece to this because there's a tax piece to this. And I'm not in favor of giving away tax dollars that come out of the personal pockets of individuals, coming back to your point, when there's not some sort of defined way to see forward that those tax dollars are going to benefit the overall community. What are your thoughts on that broadly? I use that as a way to get us to a question, but what are your thoughts on that broadly when businesses come in of any sort that want to get big tax breaks, but there really isn't a proof, or there's really no proof or proven that they're actually going to reap benefits back into the community in a monetary way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's always, it always rises to the top of the debates about how these will impact people. And well, if you give tax cuts, will that bring in businesses and will it bring in people? And, the inverse, if we raise revenue and we raise taxes on the folks who have really benefited the most over the years from these big tax breaks, will they leave? And so we've done some research over the past couple of years, alongside research that's been done for decades on this issue. And what the data bears out is that people want to live in places where their kids can go to great schools, where parents can easily get to work, where everyone has opportunities to succeed. Businesses want to be in places where there's a highly educated workforce and where there's access to infrastructure that they need, and water and electricity, and there's great parks. And, so these are all the things that revenue supports. These are all the things that tax revenue invests in communities and ensures that all kids have access to great schools. Folks can go to college. They can be well educated. There can be job training programs. There can be well-funded parks and outdoor spaces. These are all things that require revenue. And so what the research bears out is not only that overwhelmingly rich folks don't leave, but that when you're investing in community, using this revenue to invest in community, then you're better at attracting businesses. You're places where people want to live. And, when states raise revenue, it makes life better for everybody. And we all win, businesses and families alike.
Yeah, I was talking with a gentleman, Dr. Chris Jones, who's he's a scientist, a nuclear scientist that's running for the 2nd Congressional District in Arkansas. And he was talking about what's happening with companies like Walmart, where they get what you just said. They just make it to their advantage. For businesses to do business with Walmart, then certain people that work for those companies that do business with Walmart have to live or own property in the Bentonville, Arkansas area. Well, why is that? Because they know that more money in that community is going to strengthen that community. And so I see kind of a parallel with that with regard to our state revenue opportunities. What are your thoughts there, Amber?
I think that's exactly right, that businesses and business owners recognize this. And, one thing that we always point out in these discussions is that, when we think about who's overwhelmingly benefited from tax cuts over the past 40 years, it's been the very, very wealthy folks, and it's been the very biggest businesses. So small businesses, those homegrown mom and pop shops, those family businesses that have been around and operating in Chicago for generations, those are not the folks that are benefiting from things like the big federal tax and budget bill that passed last year. Regular families, regular folks, regular small and homegrown businesses, those are not the ones who have been making out. What we need to do in order to ensure that we have the services, the infrastructure, the workforce, and the opportunities that our communities need is really just to ensure that those that have long benefited from those biggest breaks, that they pay their fair share, and that they pay into the system. And we think it's long past time that happens.
We're talking with Amber Wallin, who is the executive director of the State Revenue Alliance. And what she does is she makes sure that folks are fully aware of the fact that the states have so much more power than maybe they realize, and state legislators have so much more power than they realize when it comes to making sure that corporations, wealthy corporations, and the over-billionaires are paying their fair share. And she uses a phrase of flipping the script. So Amber, let's talk a little bit about what that means and how you go about putting that into play.
Yeah, well, I think, what we find a lot, Richard, is that folks we talked a little bit on the last segment about, for a long time, those that are representing the wealthy and well-connected really investing in shaping narratives around tax. But what we know is that actually taxing wealthy earners and big corporations is one of the very most popular policies across the country. Taxes are really not a partisan thing, but they are a political thing. They're political because they impact our everyday lives. But whether you're on the right or on the left, whether you're in rural or urban areas, whether you're in Missouri or in Washington State or in Maine, overwhelmingly, people actually support ensuring that everybody pays their fair share. And so we're working with state-based groups to do exactly that at the state level, to shape their tax codes to better reflect their communities. And what we're seeing now, particularly in this time of a really big challenge for many of our communities, that folks are actually pushing back. And they're pushing back through the tax code to ensure that their neighbors have health care, that their kids have great access to not just schools, but high quality child care centers, to ensure that states can fund the programs that we need. And so it's a pretty cool time to be doing this work, to see how many communities all across states that we work with are getting engaged across all different issue areas. Whatever you care about, tax is connected to it.
Have you, and this is not a partisan statement, but it may seem partisan in nature. Typically, when you get pushback on raising state taxes, or maybe not so much raising them, but having the taxes be more prudently allocated in a state, who gives you the most pushback, have you found over time, whether it be in New Mexico or any other state in the country?
Yeah, well, what we found is, if you think about the big picture kind of history that we're looking at, maybe the past 50 years of tax policy in the U.S., especially at the state level, is that, for decades, anti-tax stakeholders, you ask where the pushback comes from. Folks who are representing the wealthy and the well-connected and those big multi-state and increasingly multinational and international businesses, those folks have really deliberately tried to shape attitudes and narratives and elections to meet their interests. Years ago, they dove in and doubled down on their support of anti-tax work in an unwavering way, because while, our opposition on these issues, they're real happy to stoke fires of culture war and hate and division. But behind closed doors or in the front row of the inauguration in 2024, they have long known that winning on tax has been their most important source of bread and butter. Securing their big tax breaks, that's their most important concern. And they've acted and funded and invested in elections accordingly. And we've all, frankly, we've all suffered as a result, because while these tax giveaways have enabled the wealthy to consolidate their wealth in recent years at a level that we have never seen before. Billionaire fortunes have grown at a rate 5 times faster in the last year than they did in the previous 5 years combined. Those same tax breaks that are, lining their pockets and making their wealth grow by magnitudes, those are the same things that have also starved state tax revenues, that have limited that supposed American dream or potential of any generation to have more opportunities than the one that came before. And then, the federal tax and budget bill made that much worse. It cut programs for families and gave the savings there to pay for tax cuts for really wealthy folks. And everybody else is paying for it as a result. But what that means right now is that states are really the places where things can happen, where communities can be protected, where the services that families and kids need most can be invested in. And we're seeing a lot of movement in that area this year.
You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM, and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and also the great folks at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. We'll be right back.
You served behind the desk.
You served in combat.
You did 4 years and got out.
You were drafted.
You gave 20 years.
You gave exactly what your country needed.
You are a veteran.
You are a veteran.
You are a veteran, and you deserve support.
If you're struggling with life after service, don't wait. Reach out.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
Behind every meal are the efforts of our farmers and farm workers, whose work feeds our families and powers our communities. For more than 30 years, AgSafe has supported this industry with the knowledge and resources needed to keep workers safe and thriving. We partner with agricultural employers to strengthen safety practices and provide hands-on training. Safety isn't paperwork, it's people, community, and peace of mind. Learn more about our work at agsafe.org. Sponsored by agsafe.org.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. I'm Richard Chu, if you're just tuning in. Thanks to Amber Wallin for giving a bit of her time to us and talking about our state's impact, both when it comes to revenue and just policy at large. She's certainly someone to follow. Again, her name is Amber Wallin. She's executive director of the State Revenue Alliance, and they put out some great information, some good white papers and all the rest in terms of what they're doing to promote stronger state, and I use the word in the segment, allocation of tax dollars. Part of my question today was if you were the head of a certain agency, or if you had the power to reallocate federal budget instantly, what would you prioritize, and what would you what would receive less and what would receive more? And so everyone that's responded so far has said military would get the biggest cuts right out of the gate. So that's interesting. Not surprising, but I think that it'd be interesting to ask this question to a room full of declared conservative voters. If they were they had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, what would they do? That would be a 50-50, 100 people in the room, Mike, 50 Democrats. Let's make it 150, 50-50 and 50. Independents, Democrats, and Republicans, and see what their thoughts would be. That would be worth a conversation. Now, I'm getting way out there. Maybe we do a special sort of live town hall on that. Ooh, wow! You guys listening in the big C suites? All right, guys. Speaking of someone that is having an impact on our safety and what's happening, not just in the States but across the country, with us this morning is Adam Snider, who is one of those leading voices. He is the Director of Communications for the Governor's Highway Safety Association. Good morning, Adam, and welcome to Choose Views. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Richard. I'm great. Good to be with you.
Thank you. I know we got a brief amount of time, but you've got this recent report that's come out regarding pedestrian fatalities, and I guess there's two ways of looking at it: the safety side and then the endangerment side. I'll just share this with you real quickly. Being here in Chicago, my wife and I, and I'm sure many others could chime in on this, are always looking at how people are walking up and down the streets. We have bike lanes, we have scooters that use the bike lanes, and sometimes they use the sidewalks. So I'm sure you got a whole litany of thoughts about that. But that being said, Adam, talk to us about your agency real quickly and tell us about this most recent report regarding the deaths or incidents when it comes to drivers and pedestrians.
Yes, well, just first off here, I'm based here in Washington, D.C., and we see that same mix of scooters and drivers and pedestrians and bicyclists, and there's always something. You really need to keep your head up at every intersection. So, yes, very, very familiar with that sort of mix, and that does create, honestly, a lot of opportunities for crashes or near misses that really people outside the vehicle, those of us walking and riding a bike or on a scooter, are going to be most at danger in situations like that. But what our data says, I'm with the Governor's Highway Safety Association. We represent state highway safety offices around the country. They focus on behavioral road safety issues. We've been tracking data on pedestrian fatalities for 15 years now, and at least with my time at GHSA, unfortunately it's been a lot of bad news lately. We hit a 40-year high just a few years ago in fatalities across the country. But luckily, in our new report out today, we mercifully are starting to see some progress, some sustained continued momentum. It's the third straight year with fewer fatalities. That said, it's still 6,700 people lost their lives. 6,700 people went out to take a walk and didn't come home at the end of the day. So we clearly have a lot more to do, but it's good to see that progress and those numbers continuing to move in the right direction.
Yeah, Adam, some of this is personal. It's all of this stuff is personal for all of us. One of the things that you said a moment ago that I wrote down real quickly, keeping your head up. And obviously, the question might be from what? I don't remember 30 years ago me walking down the street, reading a book or reading the newspaper while I was walking down the streets of Chicago or D.C. or any place in the country. I wasn't looking at my phone. So we all know that we've been, we're all susceptible to looking at our phone when we're walking down the streets of America or frankly anywhere in the world. So keeping our heads up that's not putting the blame on the pedestrian, but it is something that we all should be very cognizant of, is keep your head up when you're walking down the street, because some drivers, frankly, are not paying attention. And I had a lady tell me this like a year ago, that SUVs and pickups, and your data backs this up, are the leading cause of the vehicle pedestrian incidents. Is that correct? Help me out here.
Yes, and well, first off, just addressing the first thing, everyone should pay attention to what they're doing when they're out on the road. From the pedestrian standpoint, at the very least, because there's a lot of dangerous drivers out there, so you need to at least be aware of what's going on around there. That's not at all the pedestrian's fault. But yes, the vehicle size and weight is a huge factor as well. The SUVs and pickup trucks are more and more popular with consumers. They're larger and larger, higher off the ground, larger front grills, and that really is a huge factor in pedestrian fatalities. And yes, you are correct that the light truck category that includes SUVs, pickups, vans accounted for half of pedestrian fatalities, and passenger cars was about 40%. And if you look at the two, if you map out the numbers over the past 10 years, you can really see a big change. It actually used to be passenger cars were more likely a decade ago, but just with the proliferation of these larger, heavy vehicles and some changes in the design, unfortunately, that's a big factor in these numbers.
One of the other things that I look at and pay attention to, and I don't know how much your data covers this, is bus stops and corners. Anybody that's walked with me knows that when I see somebody standing too close to the corner where vehicles have to turn to the right, for example, or to the left, but most of the time it's to the right, that's in and of itself a dangerous spot. I never stand at the corner. I always stand a couple of feet back from the corner. And this is just sort of, kind of a self-preservation thing, because a lot of the larger vehicles don't see the edge and they end up cutting the corner. And what does your data show there? Or what is your, sort of intuitive data show there?
Yeah, intuitively, as a pedestrian who walks my kids to school or summer camp every day, certainly a factor, and that's where things like infrastructure, even simple low-cost infrastructure changes, can come into play. Some of these corners and intersections, I don't know if you've seen, where maybe they'll come in and they'll sort of paint a line and maybe put a few small barriers so that basically to prevent cars from sort of hugging the corner so close. That can be helpful. There's a lot more things that can be done, but that's certainly a factor in sort of safety overall, especially for pedestrians, bicyclists.
Yeah, that's Chicago's been pretty good about that, and we fortunately, still have issues like other big cities. I mean, a lot of it's the fact population is a big part of it. Urban areas seem to be the most have the most incidents. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, that's just simply by nature of the fact that that's where there's the most vehicles and the most people, and there's going to be the most sort of odds are that they're going to interact in a bad way. One sort of interesting thing note in our data was that even though crashes were much more likely to happen in urban areas, they are a little bit more likely to be fatal in a rural area, and that's typically because you get much higher speeds. You get, the pedestrian probably was not on a sidewalk or something like that. So that was just sort of one interesting note in the data. But you're completely right. It's largely in urban areas like Chicago and DC and all across the country.
So last, real quick, we got 30 seconds. Let people know how they can find you, and what's the number one thing you would tell a room full of people to do if they're a pedestrian?
Yes, look, ghsa.org. We have a whole lot of information on pedestrian safety and a wide range of other road safety issues, distracted driving, impaired driving, speeding, things like that. The thing I would tell a room full of pedestrians and drivers, because most of us are both, is to stay off your phone. So pay attention to your surroundings. Put the phone away, pay attention to what you're doing, and that will help keep both you and everyone else around you safer.
Adam Snider, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Governor's Highway Safety Association, we really appreciate you. Follow him. Everybody's a driver and a pedestrian at some point. Thanks for being with us, Adam. Have a great day and stay safe, okay?
Great. Thank you, Richard. You too. Stay safe.
All right. Bye now. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at USO.org today. We're with Liam after his 4th military move, when being new is starting to get old. We're with Tara during the holidays, when she misses home the most. We're with all service members and their families who need connection, comfort, and a home away from home. Are you with them? Learn more at USO.org today.
For the ones who get it done, Grainger offers the professional-grade products you need, delivered when and where you need them. Call and click Grainger.com or just stop by.
NBC News Radio, I'm Michael Kastner. Lindsey Graham's sister will fill his South Carolina Senate seat until the end of his term after his unexpected death. More from Mark Mayfield.
South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster announced on Monday that Darlene Graham Nordone will serve in the role until the term ends in January. Nordone said her brother was always there for her. Now she will be there for him. McMaster said Graham was serious about his work, but also kind-hearted and cared deeply about others.
President Trump will address the nation in a primetime speech later this week. In a Truth Social post Monday, the president said he'll be speaking Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. He didn't provide any other details about the speech. The president now says the U.S. will reinstate a blockade of Iranian ports and serve as a guardian of the Hormuz Strait. Kate Fisher reports Trump says the United States will be reimbursed for the costs of providing security at the rate of 20% on all cargo shipped.
This is really controversial, saying that it's now the US that will charge a toll, having had senior members of his cabinet saying that when the Iranians suggested that, it was simply not acceptable in terms of, international norms.
Meantime, the U.S. has carried out a third consecutive night of strikes against Iran. An investigation is continuing into a deadly shooting involving an ICE agent in Biddeford, Maine. Officials claim a man allegedly drove in the direction of that agent yesterday, causing the agent to open fire. Aaron McLaughlin reports.
New videos out revealing key moments connected to a deadly ICE-involved shooting in Maine. In one video, you see a white vehicle driving in a circle as an agent attempts to grab the door. It's unclear if this was before or after shots were fired. In another video, you can hear that fire. And in this video, you see what appears to be federal agents pulling out the limp body of a man.
Michael Kastner, NBC News Radio.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see sunny skies here for today with a high in the upper 90s. Winds out of the northwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then for tonight, mostly clear with a low near 75. By Wednesday, sunshine, high of 96 degrees. Thursday, a slight chance for showers and storms here late, a high around 94. Friday, another chance for showers and storms, high around 92. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 75.
Hey, it's the Paulacious One, coming to you from the file room of the basement of WCPT 820 in Chicago. Checking the file on the sports cubicle. The hosts, systems analyst Mike Mercado, project manager Devin Tingle, the marvelous one, Dan Marver in accounting, and me, well, it doesn't matter what I do. You can check us out, the sports cubicle, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Central on WCPT 820 Chicago. Gotta go, sports cubicle, 9 p.m. Sundays, WCPT.
A frog in boiling water and it'll jump right out. But put a frog in cool water and slowly heat it up, that frog will boil. As veterans, we tell ourselves the lie that we can handle anything. We let the water boil. You are not a frog. If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach. Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
WCPT replay.
The professor of political science and women's and gender studies at Brooklyn College and the graduate center of the City University of New York and author of Sex Is As Sex Does, Governing Transgender Identity. Yeah, Paisley Curra.
When we're talking about transgender, I know it's a very big blanket umbrella statement, but when we're in this subject matter, how will we define it?
When it comes to transgender athletes, the policies basically address the people's transition in relation to hormone levels, or the policies that the sports associations are addressing. The legislation that the Republicans have passed are just about whether someone is transgender or not, and that anybody who's transgender is just automatically, in much of this legislation, barred from participating. So the sports associations are have a much more sophisticated approach in terms of looking at making sure that that the policies are as inclusive as possible and no one has an unfair advantage.
Listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Choose Views, featured interviews, and full episodes podcasts are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Search for Choose Views or visit our new podcast page at heartlandsignal.com/podcast and catch all the recent interviews that we've had there. And, of course, if you want to watch and share this episode or any past episode of the show, go to our YouTube page at Heartland Signal, one word, and click the live tab. There you go. You can do that and share it with people. Make sure you're checking out Joan today, live, local, and progressive. She'll be talking to William Muck and Paul Lisnick and Young Me, as well as tonight, driving it home, Patty will be talking with Reed McCullum. So she'll and also have some conversation with a couple of interns from the Democratic Party of DuPage County. Dr. Eddie Glaude will be with us tomorrow. Kurt Mullett and Mandela Barnes will be joining Choose Views. So there you go. Plug in. Hang out with us. All of us. Patty and Joan. Joan and Patty. Richard. Edwin. Question of the day again. If you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which current priority would receive less funding and which would receive more? So here are some comments that we can look at real quickly. One of them is Richard, cut military spending, increase healthcare spending. That's Jill and Evanston. Let's see. Lois said, yeah, we talked about Lois earlier. Let's go to this next one. This one is less money to the military, more to education. Education, including civics, real history, and critical thinking skills. Yeah, I agree. We need to spend more money in areas that are going to actually strengthen us, our defense, by improving our healthcare systems across the board, state and federal, and local, actually. And we need to reduce our military spending. And here's the thing. When it comes to reducing military spending, let's reallocate as well as reduce. We spend so much on armament, on weapons. How about we spend more money on the men and women who actually serve? How about if we put more money in their pockets? Okay, if we reallocate, we start it there. Spend more money to make sure that those lives. Here's what's crazy, Devin and Mike. If we put more money in the pockets of the folks that serve in the military, that would actually increase our economy because they'd have more money to spend in the local grocery store, more money to spend in the local businesses, and the list goes on. Even those that live on a base or in a military installation, they still spend money off the base. They do. I know this from my own family. So that actually would boost the economy if they reallocated money, less on war weapons and more on the people that are actually serving. That would actually benefit the economies where those men and women are stationed. Simple math. And so for those who say, well, Richard, we can't reduce our military spending. We've got to defend ourselves. From who? We're always firing rockets and bullets and stuff at people. How about if we stop some of that? Now, here, this is what's so crazy, Devin. Think about the math on this for a second in terms of the military spending versus, excuse me, guys, versus something else. We just dumped a bunch of money, literally, on Iran. And what are we getting back for it? Like nothing. We're not so that right there, just in the 100 and whatever days, 100 plus days that it's been, just that money right there. If that money, let's just say for all the military hawks, sorry guys, and the war hawks that say we can't reduce our budget. Okay, then let's just reallocate it to the people in the communities, Mike. Put that money in their salary and their bonus and their hazard pay and all the rest. Guess what? That money will be probably spent. Let's say that some of it's saved or invested. And then let's just say another part of it is spent in the communities that they live in. Maybe it saves a grocery store. Who knows? So reallocation for all you war hawks. Just spend less on dropping bombs and making bombs. So for me, I'm with the folks who have said military spending would go down and healthcare spending would go up, educational spending would go up, food security measures would go up, investing in smaller businesses through federal loan programs would go up significantly. And you guys understand that our military budget, when we talk about military budget, sometimes people want to define what that is. I can tell you a line item right out of the gate that a lot of people would probably be happy with in the climate that we're in right now. Guess what that one would be, Mike? Our reduction in spending in the money that we send to the military hawks in Israel. There's one right there. And if that ruffled some feathers, good. You probably need to look in the mirror and check yourself out rather than me. Right there. So we can then stout up our own, neighborhoods and the things that we always complain about. I said this since we go back to the beginning of the Iran war. I've said it before that, but certainly since then. How many mayors, red, blue, and independent cities would love to have a piece of the money that we're wasting in Iran to help out Israel? Because we're not really helping out the United States. Let's be honest. All these war hawks that are running around lying, saying that, it's safe, it's keeping America safe. No, it's actually not. When I hear people say things like that, actually, I question their judgment. I question, what do they do for a living? If there's a person out there that's still working and they're saying things like this war in Iran, this military incursion, this military attack, whatever we want to call it, if they are actually ones to believe that this is protecting America, and they hold a job, let's say they're a loan officer, or let's say that they are someone that works in a wherever they work, where they're making determinations on people's welfare. I question them being in that job, Mike, because, I think about that and go, well, what kind of discernment and discretion and thoughts do they actually have when it comes to looking at someone's financial profile and all the other things? Is there a person that's down with the war in Iran right now because they think it's keeping us safe, but yet they're making the decision on a kid getting into college somewhere? Or a single mom or a single dad having access to benefits that they need to sustain their family. Is that person sitting in an office making those kinds of decisions? If they are, I got an issue with that, and you guys, I think, should too. You don't have to. I'm just putting it out there. That's Richard's saying what he's saying. But those are the reasons why I ask questions like, if you had the power to instantly reallocate federal budget, what would you do? Where would you go up? Where would you go down? And it's good to see you guys are plugged into this. Let me see. We may have another comment about this. Yeah. Jill says we spend too much on weapons while military families are on assistance. That's right on, Jill. We do. That's you're a great way of saying what I was saying with less words. Yeah, we do. Why should they be on assistance of any kind? They should be, and Eric Grant has talked about this a lot for a long, long time. And I got to give him his flowers on this. He said for the longest time, one of the biggest tragedies that we have in this country is how we treat our former military men and women, whether they've been injured physically or they have PTSD. They should be people that are taken care of for eternity, because they always prop up making them the ultimate sacrifice or defending our country. You hear presidents say it at the end of many presidents, Democrat and Republican, saying at the end of their speeches, God bless America and God bless our troops, or take care of our troops. Okay, well then let's literally take care of them. So thank you for that. for that note, Jill. All right, let's take a quick break. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, as well as our good friends at WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back.
Sound familiar? At Mattress Firm, we understand there are many problems that can keep you up at night, like snoring, aches and pains, or sleeping hot. Our sleep experts have the unrivaled know-how to match you with a mattress that can help. And now at Mattress Firm, save up to $700, plus get a free adjustable base with select Sealy Posturepedic mattresses. For the great sleep you deserve, visit Mattress Firm. We make sleep easy. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.
All right, son. Time to put out this campfire.
Dad, we learned about this in school.
Oh, did you now? Okay. What's first?
Smokey Bear said to.
First, drown it with a bucket of water, then stir it with a shovel.
Wow, you sound just like him.
Then he said,
if it's still warm, then do it again.
Where can I learn all this?
It's all on SmokeyBear.com with other wildfire prevention tips. Because only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu. So when we left, we're still talking about this budget. What would you do to reallocate? If we got a little bit of time, give us a quick holler if you're sitting where you can dial a number, hear what you have to say. But I'm all for it. I have been for a long time. Let's reduce military spending. But if that's not something that somebody wants to do, then let's reallocate so that our active duty military and those who are not, and those who are retired, that they're taken care of. Let's start there. Reallocate some of that money. Stop dropping bombs. Stop sending money to the Israeli government and military for what? To protect them from whom? Much of which, I had a conversation with someone the other day. So I'll just share this real quickly in the space of allocation of budget. If we spent less time solving or pretending that we're solving other countries' problems, and this is something that, and this is what the person said, Donald Trump ran on America first. That's one of the things he ran on. America first. We're not going to have these wars. We're going to make sure we take care of our people at home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the last 100+ days, we spent more time conversing around this other thing, this war in Iran and Israel, than we have about what's right for the American people. And so if we're going to have a real conversation about America first, I'm not against us pulling back some of our, and I can see why people were drawn to that. I'm not against us pulling back some of the ways in which we assist other countries. Not that we do, but the way in which we do. That's different than not doing it. I'm not saying we stop, but there's a lot of countries in the continent of Africa that the assistance that Israel gets could be spread, the Israeli government and then the Israeli military. Let me be specific, because that's what started the conversation with this person. Could be spent differently in countries in Africa. That's a big debate that nobody really wants to have. I wonder why. But to that end about reallocation, I think that you guys are, it's a simple question with some very simple answers, and I don't mean that they're simple answers, but ones that are very direct and to the point. The military budget is way overbloated, and it's gotten bigger. And let's be honest, this ICE, the other thing that I would end immediately is all funding to ICE, ASAP, not even a second thought. But the way in which it's written, because Republicans are in control of the House and the Senate, the White House, the judiciary, now ICE has got too many billions of dollars. Meanwhile, people are suffering, not being able to pay for health care. How in the heck do we have homeless people in America when we got all this money going toward ICE to do what? Get rid of people and then shoot somebody again? I mean, we just said this the other day when we were talking to attorney Kate Lincoln Goldfinch about it's gone quiet. Well, now suddenly, I mean, maybe the powers that be, the universe heard us. Now we've got 2 shootings inside of a week. that have become public. And I think that they need to be public. Don't think I know. They need to be public. We need to know about them because the money that we're spending to fund ICE is ending up with people being dead. And the money that we're not using that could be going toward the programs that we're all talking about is leaving people broke and destitute. I mean, you heard what I said earlier in the bit of Choose Views News that I presented. The number of people that have increased credit card debt because they can't afford to pay for the increases in groceries. So I also say, if I had that power instantly, I'm eliminating ICE completely. And then what I'm going to do is make sure that our Border Patrol has the tools that they needed, going back to what President Biden had proposed in the summer of 2024. Okay. So that's one right there. I think what was the last allocation? $70 billion. Okay, take 70 cities. That's $1 billion a city. That could help a hell of a lot of folks out in 70 cities in America. Red, blue, and independent. So there's a lot of people with ICE that are getting fat financially because of this money that was allocated by Republicans in the House of Representatives and the Senate. That's what happened. Oh, no, by the way, speaking of money, guys, this one kind of flew under the radar. And this just goes to show how sometimes the corporate media, we know what side they're on. We're going to grab this call after I say this. You guys know that the housing bill, went into effect, became law. Trump didn't sign it, though. I told y'all it was going to happen. He did not sign the bill, Devin. So they'll take credit for it. But he didn't sign it. Why? Because the SAVE Act wasn't part of the bill. He wasn't going to sign it. I told y'all he wasn't going to sign it. He didn't sign it. It's now law because it went the 10 days that it is under expiration if the House approves it. So it's law. It's approved, but not signed by the president. That just goes to show how much of a weak ass he is. All right, let's go to a quick call. Let's go to Denise with an answer to the question of the day. Good morning, Denise, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning, Richard, and brilliant listeners. I think first and foremost, increase the wages, the minimum wage. Even the name is insulting. The minimum. Let me give you a bare amount.
Yeah.
Increase it.
I didn't even think of that. Yep.
Teach people how to do AI. Don't bring in a college professor or a doctor and say, okay, extrapolate the menial actions. No, teach them. A goes into B, and we will get this. Teach. You're probably going to start calling me Teacher Face Junior, but teach them how to do it. And then we know, because it is an advanced age, and that's fine. But if I don't know, then I can't show. So that's it. Increase money. If groceries are going up, you got to have money to spend for groceries. So that's mine. Thank you, Richard. Have a marvelous day.
Thanks, Denise. We appreciate your call. Have a great day. Yeah, she's right. As I often talk, I just said this yesterday, we can reduce taxes all day long, but how about if we increase wages? Yeah, let's raise the national wage rather than calling it the minimum wage. Let's raise a national wage beyond a living wage. Why not? I mean, the companies say this oftentimes. Leaders of big companies say if we increase the wages here, the minimum wage and all that, then it's going to impact our shareholders. Okay. So what? Impact the shareholders. Maybe shareholders can make a little bit less money. And the people that do the work in various corporations throughout America can make a little bit more. And guess what? Rising tide lifts all ships. So mandate that we increase the federal wage. And then to Denise's point, let's stop calling it a minimum wage. We're going to pay you the bare minimum just to keep you here, keep you broke and upset and frustrated. Because that's what happens. So there's another one. And guys, listen, this is a question that if you don't get to comment on it today, keep this in, like I said earlier, two things. Keep this in your list of questions to be talking about and sharing with people, to ask them that question. If you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which current priority would receive less funding and which would receive more? Ask the folks around you that question. See where they stand. It might give you oftentimes we all are susceptible to assuming that we know what other people are thinking. Even those that, quote, may side with us politically, socially, economically, and other ways. But this is a question that would be, I think, a fair one, kind of a fun one, maybe. Certainly an eye-opener to ask the people in your life. And we'll bring this back to the table maybe later in the week. This is a reminder. Maybe on Friday, Mike, remind me, make absolutely sure, because I know, Mike, you'll be here, that on Friday I remind people of this question so that we can have them have a weekend, a thing to take with them over the weekend. I think it might be surprising, maybe not. It might be confirming or affirming what you are thinking, but we'll get down that path. Let's see. We got a couple of the quick comments. Let's see what Nancy has to say. Less funding, Richard, federal funding on ICE and increased budget for higher education and medical research. Absolutely, Nancy. That is, yes. This is why we have, thanks, Denise, the smartest listeners, participants in the process. Reducing credit card, helping to reduce credit card debt. That's another good one. Let's see. Yeah, ICE. Get another one. Get rid of ICE. So there you go. That all ties back. ICE all ties back to in some ways the military budget. I mean, I know that ICE is part of Department of Homeland Security, but they're acting in a paramilitary way, and they're presenting themselves as military-esque. So yeah, let's get rid of ICE completely, and then take the money that's been allocated to ICE, and let's send that money to places that we've defined. Medical research for folks like Dr. Annie Andrews, who will be with us in a bit. Let's send that money to hospitals so that they can keep staffed up in areas where hospitals have been closing. Let's send that money to small businesses that need some backboard for loans to get the money that they need to stay viable. Obviously, let's send it to what, like Denise was saying, in terms of education. Let's bump up the wages. $70 billion is a lot of money, and it may not go everywhere, but it'll go a lot of places. So that's again, why we asked the question. If you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which current priority would receive less funding and which would receive more? We might ask that question to Dr. Andrews. I know we got a lot of other things to talk about, but we may throw it her way as well, see what she has to say about that. But I appreciate you guys participating in that. Make sure you are sharing this with people, because I think, like I said, you might be surprised in what they're saying. Let's take a little bit of a break so we have as much time as possible with Dr. Andrews. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and now AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and our good friends down in North Carolina, WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina. I'm Richard Chu. When we come back, we'll be talking with Dr. Annie Andrews, candidate for U.S. Senate in South Carolina. We'll be right back.
This is WCPT telling you how you can shop blue. Whether you're out in the field playing football or baseball, or inside the stadium playing hockey or basketball, or any sport really, let's take a look at some sporting goods stores that support the Democratic Party. Academy. Now, Academy as a company does not give to politics. Some of their senior leaders do, and in 2024, 87% of their donations went to Democrats. Hibbett. Now, Hibbett as a company does not give to politics, but some of their senior leaders do, and in 2024, 93% of those donations went to Democrats. Dick's Sporting Goods. Now, Dick's Sporting Goods as a company does not give to politics. Yes, some of their senior leaders do, and it's kind of a little all over. Sometimes lean more right, sometimes lean more left. It's really hard to find a pattern. But hey, remember when the right was attacking Dick's Sporting Goods when they decided to push the age of purchasing firearms to 21 and stop selling assault-styled rifles? This has been WCPT telling you how you can shop blue.
Mr. Big-Time Capital One Bank guy.
Mom, please.
Well, look at this Capital One Cafe. I just might move in.
Or just drop by. Capital One Cafes are open 7 days a week.
I could put my spoon collection right here by the ATM, yes.
Wow, you weren't kidding, Mom.
I never kid about the spoon collection, son. Oh, hey, what's that thing you always say?
There's no fees or minimums on Capital One checking accounts.
No, the other one.
What's in your wallet?
Oh, that's my boy.
Terms apply. Visit CapitalOne.com/bank guide for details. Capital One and member FDIC.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Spina bifida is a common birth defect, and everyone with spina bifida from childhood through adulthood deserves to flourish. The Spina Bifida Association is creating a future where this is more than just possible. It's inevitable. We're advancing clinical care and shaping innovative research. With your help, we'll build the future that people with spina bifida deserve. Join us at SBAA.org. That's SBAA.org. This message is sponsored by the Spina Bifida Association of America.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see sunny skies here for today with a high in the upper 90s. Winds out of the northwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then for tonight, mostly clear with a low near 75. By Wednesday, sunshine, high of 96 degrees. Thursday, a slight chance for showers and storms here late, a high around 94. Friday, another chance for showers and storms, high around 92. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 75.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chew, and as we've been waiting for, our next guest is Dr. Annie Andrews. She is all that we could ask for and a great candidate for any office, but particularly as a senator, U.S. Senator in South Carolina. As you all know, she's running and has been running for that seat and was ready for the fight with the late Lindsey Graham. But that's changed, obviously, with his passing. I'm so happy to welcome Dr. Andrews back to Chew's Views. Good morning, Dr. Andrews.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start right off. I was going to read the quote, but I'll start just by saying this. You had some comments about the passing of Senator Graham, and what I want to applaud you on is kudos to you for showing the grace that you did and being gracious in that, but at the same time recognizing that you're a fighter as well, and that we take that fight. You're taking that fight still for the folks in South Carolina and making sure that together we can all do better in the state. And South Carolina is important to all of us, not just because of the Senate race, but it's so many folks that are from the South that have moved to the North, particularly in the East Coast, come from South Carolina. So welcome again. Talk to us about how this, I have to tell you, all due respect, you were the first person I thought about when I heard about Senator Graham passing away. I thought, oh, wow. So talk to us about how this has impacted you, and talk to us about how we go forward in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, the news was shocking and profound, and it's really sort of rocked the entire state of South Carolina. Lindsey Graham, whether you agreed with him or not, was in the U.S. Congress for 3 decades. He was a fixture here in South Carolina. This was wildly unexpected. And, I'm holding space for the folks in Lindsey Graham's life who loved him, his family, his friends, his staff, his supporters, as they grieve this loss. As you said, though, I've been in this race for over a year, and it was never about one person. It was never just about him. It's about, you know, sending a fighter to Washington, D.C. on behalf of South Carolinians. None of the problems that I got in this race to address changed over the weekend. So as a campaign, we're really staying laser focused on that. As you know, though, I am a practicing physician. So, I understand that life is fragile and fleeting. I don't take the death of anyone lightly. And, it's a really profound moment for South Carolina and this country.
And obviously, there's been a lot of people that have criticized people for not being more critical, and I get that because of what you just said about healing South Carolina and going forward. Part of the reason you got into the race as a physician, a pediatrician, is because you saw how bad policy and bad politics actually was costing people their lives, or certainly their security in the lives that they live. So I remember you've said this and you've talked about this and you've been committed to it, that you're in this race, in this fight, because you want to make things better for South Carolina. So the juxtaposition of 30 years in the U.S. Senate and not making lives better for all of the people, which is what you've committed to, is the other reason why I believe people have got to understand the power that you bring to this race. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I got into politics after working in children's hospitals as a pediatrician for 15 years and understanding the impact of broken policies on my patients and their families. I take care of kids who are dealing with food insecurity, kids who are being diagnosed with new chronic diseases and their parents can't afford their insulin or their asthma inhalers, kids who are in the throes of mental health crises and their parents can't find mental health resources in their community, kids who have to spend the night in their hospital room alone because their parents have to leave their sick child's bedside to go work their third shift job just to make ends meet. And then kids who have been shot. These are all policy failures. These are all choices that have been made at the level of the state government and the federal government because we don't have enough fighters in Washington, D.C. who inherently care about about doing what's best for kids, families, and communities all across this country. That's who I'm fighting for. I am in this fight for South Carolina's families. I know we need policy change so that we can allow every child to reach their full potential in this country.
I would tell you that that's a message that every person running for office right now on a federal level, whether it be in the House or the Senate, should be projecting, because it is policy, it is systems, or there are systems that have kind of been wash, rinse, repeat. Just let's keep doing the same thing over and over again. And that hasn't made lives better for people in so many states. And when I hear the conversation that Democrats need to be talking to people, everyday folk, I agree with that. But at the same time, right now, the people that are in power federally are Republicans. So that leads me to this question. The numbers say that we're going to take back the House. And there's an opportunity, strong one, and you're part of this movement to take back the Senate. Help us understand what you see in the numbers. I mean, we saw what's unfortunately happened in Maine, and then we have this change to the fight. What are you seeing? What are your, if you have any inside, track on what you think are the real numbers on the Senate side?
Yeah, I think we have a real shot at taking back the Senate. And I think what we don't hear from a lot of national media is all the different paths we have to take back the Senate. There's been so much focus, of course, on Maine. There's a lot of focus on Michigan. There's a lot of really strong Democrats running throughout the South that don't get quite as much attention. But there's a lot of different ways to take back the Senate. And the sentiment that I've heard for the past year across the state of South Carolina is people are tired of career politicians on both sides of the aisle. They're tired of the same old broken system in Washington, D.C. They're tired of politicians who enrich themselves on both sides of the aisle while they're up there to serve. And so they're ready for a generational shift in leadership. And that's what my candidacy represents. And, I think that This is bigger, as I said, this is bigger than one incumbent. This, I won't know who my opponent is until probably the end of August. There's a Republican primary special election scheduled for August 11th. There are going to be, I'm sure, 4 or 5 candidates in that race, which means it will likely go to a runoff, which would be on August 25th. So it may be the morning of August 26th when I actually know who my opponent is. But the good news is, as I said, my mission hasn't changed. The problems facing South Carolinians haven't changed. Their need for a fighter in Washington, D.C. hasn't changed. We had done a lot of polling, of course, over the past year. And one of the interesting things we found was that I overperform a generic Democrat by double digits with important constituencies like non-MAGA Republicans and independents. And I think that's because I'm not a career politician, because I'm a pediatrician and a mom who got involved in politics because I understand that's the most efficient and effective way to solve my patients' problems. And that's resonating with voters, Democrats, Republicans, and independents all across the state. And that won't change just because my opponent has changed.
Well, that leads to 2 questions, because the guys and I here in the studio were talking about this morning, kind of a wonderment. So maybe you can take us through a little bit of this. So after that Republican runoff takes place, we'd love to have you back on to talk about then how you're looking at positioning yourself. I mean, the strategy that becomes the strategy then becomes reality, because now you're knowing who you're going to be competing against in those last 65 to 75 days. But former Senator Graham's sister was appointed by the governor as the person that will be in place. Have you heard anything that says that she might want to be running? Did I miss something there? Or what? Just sort of walk us through what this all means with her being in the seat now.
Yeah, there's so much chatter online about what's happening down here. So McMaster, our governor, did appoint Lindsey Graham's sister to finish the current term, which will, of course, end at the beginning of January. And I think this was, a nice way to respect Lindsey Graham's family. I know McMaster and Graham were very close. I think this is a gesture of support and respect for Lindsey Graham and his service to this state. I have absolutely heard zero indication. She's not a politician. She has been in, helps people with disabilities find jobs for her career. I don't think she has any interest in actually running for this seat. So I think this was a way to, respect Lindsey Graham in his passing and to hold the seat while those who are interested in running build their campaigns, because, they've got their names are going to be on the ballot in less than a month. And that's not a lot of time to build a campaign infrastructure. Of course, we just had a knockdown, drag out Republican primary for the governor's race that Alan Wilson ultimately won. So a lot of folks who lost that race are now interested in this Senate seat. Folks who lost, Mark Lynch, who primaried Lindsey in June, is up for this Senate seat. So we're going to hear a lot of names floated. I think, all of them are career politicians. All of them have the same policy positions that I've been running against for a year. So whoever it is, we're ready, and we're focused on what it is we want to do for people in South Carolina.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Let's take a little bit of a break, because when we come back, I want to talk about not just the candidates that are running, but what you think will be what the voters need to hear once a candidate on the Republican side is determined. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM. Down in North Carolina. That's right. And then, of course, our good folks at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu, talking with Dr. Annie Andrews, who's running for U.S. Senate in the great state of South Carolina. We'll be right back.
The best words to hear at the TSA security checkpoint? You're good to go. All it takes is a little preparation. Get to the airport early. Bring a carry-on bag that fits in the overhead, and have an acceptable ID. Not all state-issued IDs will cut it. Check out tsa.gov/ID and see which TSA acceptable IDs make the grade, like a real ID or passport.
Before you jet, do a little prep, and you're good to go. Check out tsa.gov/ID or the MyTSA app.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with Dr. Annie Andrews, who is running for U.S. Senate seat in South Carolina. And with all that's taken place recently, it's an honor to have her on the show to talk about not only a little bit about the late Senator Lindsey Graham, but also about the future. That is going to be determined in the fall, in the November midterm, and a Republican opponent will be determined before Labor Day. So no matter who comes out of that, you're ready. We know that you are. You've been very much on point. You haven't wavered from what you believe in and what you believe is right for the folks in the state of South Carolina. But one of the things that I think is, and help us out here, it's going to be one of your advantages, is that the criticisms that were properly delivered to Lindsey Graham about his wishy-washiness, and one day another, have been true to the Republican Party in the state when it comes to Donald Trump on a federal level. They've moved with whatever he says and what he wants the state to do. So let's talk about your consistency and why that matters to the voters in the state of South Carolina.
I mean, that's the beauty of knowing what you believe in and standing for what you believe in, is your position doesn't change based on who your opponent is, what the political environment is. And, that's why I think it's so important that we start running non-career politicians for office. I am running to fix our broken healthcare system. That is why I got off the sidelines. I've been on the front lines of our broken healthcare system for a long time. I see the impact of what it looks like when you have a system that is motivated by profit, that is not centered on patients, and it's getting worse and worse and worse year after year. I've been practicing for 20 years, and it's just gotten unbearable how broken the system is. We've got to fix it. And of course, over the past, year and a half, we're now facing these impending Medicaid budget cuts that will be devastating to people all across this country, particularly in states like South Carolina, where we never bothered to expand Medicaid. We have 15 counties without an OBGYN. We have so many people who live in rural parts of the state that cannot access primary care or mental health care, and that's all going to get so much worse because of this irresponsible budget that Republicans passed in the U.S. Senate and Donald Trump signed into law. That's my most urgent thing I need to do when I get there, is do everything I can to stop those Medicaid budget cuts. And we also have to deal with the ramifications of RFK Jr. being the Secretary of HHS. We have to fully fund the CDC and the NIH, and we have to do what we can to impeach and remove him. And that will help to address all of that. Fixing the broken healthcare system will help to address the cost of living emergency that is top of mind to every voter I talk to down here. People who don't know if they can put food on the table, keep their lights on, fill up the gas tank, make ends meet at the end of the month. So as I said before, all of those problems didn't change over the weekend. And those are the reasons I got in this race. And those are the things I'm going to be focused on fixing.
And I'm so glad I love hearing you say it that way. Those things did not change over the weekend. And if anything, I think they were highlighted, like I said earlier, because they had not been addressed by the former senator in any way that was meaningful to all of the folks in the state of South Carolina, not just the ones that voted for him. Historically have voted for him, and other Republicans. I want to come back to something about what you said about RFK Jr. Earlier in the show, I did a little bit of a commentary on what's happening with this Cyclosporus parasite. And ironically, I guess if that's the word we want to use, because of the way in which CDC was, they're attempting to gut it, where I'm going with this. Talk about that. I mean, because obviously they would have been the guard in this space. So let's get into that. You take the baton.
Yeah, I mean, if you scroll back on my social media timelines, my last post before, the events of this weekend was about my experience for 20 years treating patients with explosive diarrhea and how I never thought that would be relevant to a US Senate campaign, but here we are. The thing about public health is when it's working, you don't know it's there. You don't see it working. And that's what America's public health system was until RFK Jr. took the helm. There's all this stuff, all these really smart scientists and testing and monitoring and surveillance and reporting happening behind the scenes, and we don't know about it, but it protects us from infectious diseases, from foodborne illnesses, all of those things. And because we have a federal government and a Department of HHS that doesn't believe in science, we've now gutted all of those programs and we're feeling the ramifications. I mean, it's hard to believe this is even our reality. I'm here in South Carolina where we had a measles outbreak, nearly 1,000 cases of the measles. We have increased cases of the flu and all these other vaccine preventable illnesses because we've appointed a grifter and a conspiracy theorist to lead our federal Department of Health and Human Services. And it's absurd, it's ridiculous, and it's got to stop. And that's why one of the reasons Dems have to win in November, because we have to get him out of that job. If we have 2 more years of RFK Jr. leading HHS, it will be devastating, further devastating to our public health system.
We, and thank you for that, Dr. Andrews. We here in Chicago catch a lot of hell from a lot of people all the time. Illinois as a state catches a lot of hell from people all the time. One thing that we haven't done is put people in office that have made it worse when it comes to some of the healthcare concerns. Every state, every city has its gun violence and gun issues, and you just spoke about that as it relates to the children that you've seen that have suffered from that. But it's a policy decision, and the state, unfortunately, hasn't really done a good job there with the current leadership. Talk about how you want to lean into that, both from a state on a state level, but then the federal impact.
Yeah, I mean, gun violence is a public health crisis. It was deemed a public health emergency under the Biden administration. As soon as Trump took office, they rescinded that designation, which actually did stop a lot of really important work that was happening to address the public health crisis of gun violence. They shut the doors of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention immediately. All the work that was being done in that office was basically just put on the shelf. And it's really a tragedy. There's a lot of things that Americans agree on, a lot of common sense gun laws that do not impede on the Second Amendment. I support the Second Amendment, but the majority of Americans want to see universal background checks passed, and they want to see a red flag law, federal red flag law passed, a federal secure storage law, increased funding for gun violence prevention research, and evidence-based hospital and community violence intervention programs. It's not rocket science. We know what the solutions are. We're the only developed country that has this public health crisis of gun violence. Every other country has mental health issues. They have violent video games and violent movies. We're the only country where we allow people to have unfettered access to guns. And as a mom, it just, broke my heart watching headline after headline of school shooting or toddlers finding unsecured firearms or teen suicide. And as a pediatrician and a mom, I knew I had to do something. So many years ago, I joined Moms Demand Action. And that's really how I found my footing in these advocacy spaces, ultimately leading to my pivot into politics.
Dr. Andrews, voters are obviously the ones that make the difference here. And obviously, the state has voted in a particular way politically over a number of years, and it just continues to happen. And unfortunately, the state has not prospered as a result of that in a number of areas that you've been very locked in and running on. And the country has similar tragedies in that regard. So what is it that the voters are going to need to, how do I want to ask this question without, what do the voters need to do differently other than just vote? What do they need to see or hear differently? Because they clearly are experiencing the downside of Republican leadership in the state. So, what do we need to do to get folks to go, yeah, Dr. Andrews makes more sense than any Republican that they would throw at us?
It's not an easy task. People are so locked in on their traditional partisan voting patterns. In the South, probably more than anywhere else across the country. But we're starting to see cracks in that because real people are suffering the harms of this second Trump administration. As we just talked about, in the public health sphere and the healthcare sphere, the gas prices, grocery prices, they're starting to understand that the federal government, the Trump administration, they're not doing what they said they were going to do when they asked for their vote back in the 2024 election. But it takes, conversation after conversation, interpersonal conversations, asking people to critically think about which party, which candidate actually aligns with their values and which one is actually going to fight to solve those problems. I think I have a little bit of a leg up on that, again, because I'm a doctor and a mom first and really a politician way after that. I present myself to the voters as, a pediatrician who's seen these problems firsthand, as a mom who's concerned about my own 3 children who are in the public school system. And then, yes, I'm running as a Democrat, but that's not what I lead with, because that will make voters in South Carolina just go to their typical reflexive, oh, she's a Democrat, Democrats are bad. And if that's what voters do, I'm never going to win. But our polling was showing that I was breaking through. Non-MAGA Republicans, independents were giving me a second look. They were giving me a chance because I sound like a regular person. I talk to regular people. I don't sound like a career politician because I'm not one. So it's not an easy task, but our campaign is up to it. And we've been doing it really effectively over the past year. We're building a coalition that we need to win in November, no matter who my opponent is.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're going to throw all that they can at you. And I know you know this. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know that's already happening. So we've got your back here in Chicago and the upper Midwest and every place that listens to my show. We have got your back. We definitely want to have you back on maybe in late August or early September after we get that we know who you're going to be running against. I know your positions aren't going to have changed. But we want to definitely be able to do everything we can to help you get that, to win this seat, because it's important for the state. It's important for the country, obviously. It's important for the state. And that together, that message, I hope, is one that continues to resonate. I threw out a question that I do every day on the show, and this is one that I'm just going to ask you real quickly. You may have heard me say it earlier. If you had the power to instantly reallocate the federal budget, which current priority would receive less funding and which would receive more funding? I'm going to throw that to you since we have you for another minute or so.
I go for less funding for endless, unnecessary, violent wars overseas and more funding for America's broken healthcare system. That's a pretty easy question for me to answer.
That's why I asked it last. But Dr. Andrews, how can folks find you? How can folks get involved in your campaign? We have got to help you do everything we can to help you win this seat.
Yeah, I need people to know that I can win, and then I need them to help me win. So they can go to DrAnnieAndrews.com, sign up to volunteer. You can phone bank and text bank from anywhere. You can click that donate button. This is a grassroots campaign. Our average donation is $26. I don't take corporate PAC money. We've received donations from all across the country this week and every day of this campaign. So I need people to chip in what they can and then follow along with me on social media, Annie Andrews MD on Instagram and most other platforms, and we can win this seat.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to having you back in a few weeks. It's as hot in Chicago as it is in North Carolina right now. So that. But Dr. Andrews, thanks for spending some time with us this morning. I know our listeners appreciate you and what you're doing, and we've got our fingers and toes and everything crossed to help you get across this finish line successfully. So we'll talk to you again real soon. Sound good?
Yes. Thank you so much.
All right. Talk with you soon. Be well. All right, guys. As always, it's great when our guests can be with us and give us their thoughts and opinions. And it was great to have Dr. Andrews talk to us a little bit about this race. So many of you have said a similar thing about what you would do. So I wanted to wrap up with a couple of the other thoughts from folks as it relates to the budget. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, still more people that have leaned into less military funding and less foreign wars and more money to our healthcare systems and our educational systems. So that's good to see. And we'll keep this question alive for the week because I want you guys to be able to, when we get to the weekend, have that as part of your arsenal to ask the folks that you hang out with, what do you think you would do? What would you do if you had that power, instant power to be able to reallocate federal budget, federal spending? Make sure you follow Dr. Andrews. Thanks to all of our guests today. Thanks to Adam Snider, who is the director of the communications director of the Governor's Highway Safety Association, And, of course, Amber Wallin, who's the executive director of the State Revenue Alliance out in New Mexico. And she ties into a lot. They consult with a lot of state leaders on ways that they can improve their tax, the revenue that they get from tax, and how they can better allocate that. So check each of them out and throw some money at Dr. Andrews. She needs it. 773-763-9270 is always our number. We're wrapping up today. Thanks for being with us. Stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. Take a deep breath, guys, and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container, because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Hey, Progressives, it's Richard Chu, host of Chu's Views, weekdays 6 to 8 a.m. Central. We're all anxious for the 2026 midterm election to arrive so we can restore some sanity and much-needed oversight to our government. In fact, it's the most important midterm election in American history, and Chu's Views will be in the thick of it, bringing you candidate interviews on a regular basis. I'll be talking to Democratic Party hopefuls running for House and Senate at the federal and state level, as well as candidates for governor and other state and local offices.
I am in love with our ability to fight for our rights, to fight for our future, to fight for our freedoms, to fight as our ancestors fought. It's just our moment. This is just our time to stand up and to speak up. We can't give up on this.
If you miss any of the interviews live, you'll be able to find them all on WCPT's candidate interviews page at heartlandsignal.com/candidates. That's Choose Views, weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk for 20 years.
Amazon Business. With smart business buying, innovative AI tools optimize your purchasing experience, paired with delivery options built for business. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. In Maine, a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent shot and killed a driver yesterday. Immigrant rights groups identified the man killed in Biddeford as a 26-year-old native of Colombia. The Homeland Security Department says an agent fired when a vehicle tried to flee a location that officers were watching. Maine Senator Angus King says Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Wallin told him that earlier information that the man was the target of an enforcement action was incorrect. The FBI is now leading an investigation. 12 states are suing to block Paramount's takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery. The lawsuit argues the $81 billion merger would extinguish competition in Hollywood. Here's California Attorney General Rob Bonta, who's leading the case.
Movie theaters, basic cable TV distributors, and audiences on every sofa and in every movie seat would feel the impact of this unlawful merger.
Bonta's office says the states are asking Warner and Paramount to not close the merger until after the judicial process concludes. The U.S. attacked Iran with the Islamic Republic retaliating across the Middle East.
The U.S. launched strikes on Iran early Tuesday, hours after President Donald Trump said Washington is reinstating a blockade on Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump separately suggested the U.S. will charge other ships for safe passage, upending hundreds of years of American policy supporting freedom of navigation across the globe. Iran responded with attacks targeting Bahrain, Jordan, and 2 tankers associated with the UAE travelling through the strait, killing 1 mariner and wounding around 8 others. The attacks come as Iran and the US vie for control of the strait, through which a fifth of all traded crude oil and natural gas once passed in peacetime. I'm Charles de la Tesma.
This is AP News.
AP Sports, I'm Mike Hempen. Jordan Walker silenced Philadelphia's Bluebirds by homering on its last 6 swings, chasing down Phillies slugger Kyle Schwarber in the final round to win the home run derby. Walker becomes the first St. Louis Cardinal to do so. This evening, it's Major League Baseball's All-Star Game. Philadelphia's Christopher Sanchez will start for the National League. Toronto's Dylan Cease will be on the mound for the American League. This afternoon, France and Spain meet in a World Cup semifinal game in Dallas. Utah Jazz guard Trey Alexander was taken from the court on a stretcher Monday night after appearing to injure his side on a drive to the basket in an NBA Summer League game against the Bulls. No word on his injury. And Josh Allen was voted the NFL's top quarterback by the Associated Press in a preseason survey. I'm Mike Hempen, AP Sports.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see sunny skies here for today with a high in the upper 90s. Winds out of the northwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then for tonight, mostly clear with the low near 75. By Wednesday, sunshine, a high of 96 degrees. Thursday, a slight chance for showers and storms here late, a high around 94. Friday, another chance for showers and storms, high around 92. That's your latest Chicago weather update.
Currently, it's 79.
This is Chicago's progressive talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Save big on everything for your next project when you shop at Menards. Give your walls a fresh, updated look with Pittsburgh's Ultra Interior Paint. It's a paint and primer in one that provides a durable, washable finish. Choose from thousands of color options to customize your living space. View our entire selection of paint products today on Menards.com. Plus, check out the weekly flyer to view all of our great deals happening this week.
Save big money at Menards.
Take summer to the next level with the stunning performance of a Porsche. Find the perfect model for you at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. Browse and test drive our extensive selection, like the 2026 Porsche Cayenne. Right now, lease the 2026 Cayenne for just $1149 a month for 39 months. Discover performance like no other when you visit the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park or PorscheExchange.com.
$10,859 to assign for qualified buyers. Excludes tax, title, license, and dealer fee. No security deposit required. See dealer for details. Offer ends 7/31/26.
WCPT replay.
We're joined by Congressman Mike Quigley.
When I got sworn in 16 years ago, the first person that came up to me, of all things, was a Republican named Mark Kirk, who later became our senator. And he did give good advice. He said, the only thing that gets done here is when we meet in the middle. So there's a lot of truth to that. But, you know, what I tell folks who are looking from afar, not looking at what this president's doing, moving us toward more of an autocracy, is you meet in the middle when the middle is reasonable, right? And you both benefit. That's a two-party democracy at work. But when one side takes the most extreme positions, it's not my job to go way out there to meet them.
Yeah.
They have to come back to the norm.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive